The small kitchen was filled with thin smell of boiling concoction rice. Angela bent over the pot, stirring slowly. There was no oil to brighten the food, no pepper to lift its taste, and certainly no meat to make it a proper meal. She had used the last 500 naira she earned from washing clothes to put something on the fire because her husband had once again refused to give her money. Angela was tired. Tired of the silence of hunger, tired of the insults, and tired of the life she had found herself trapped in. She had no family to turn to. Her parents died when she was young, and since then, she had learned to carry her pain quietly. Marriage was supposed to bring comfort, but instead it had given her chains. From the parlor, Patrick's voice thundered. Angela, what are you cooking? I hope you remembered meat this time because I cannot come back from work and eat ordinary food like a poor man. Angela closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath. Poor man? She almost laughed. If only Patrick knew how the neighbors described him, but she said nothing. She lifted the pot and then dished the food inside a plate. Patrick sat on a worn-out sofa with his legs stretched out, his shirt half unbuttoned and his eyes scanning the plate. The moment she placed it before him, his face darkened. Angela, he called out with a sharp tone. Where is the meat? There is no meat, sir, she answered quietly. You didn't give me money. I used my own to buy this, so please just manage. Patrick leaned forward, his eyes blazing. If your father or mother were alive, would you dare serve them this rubbish? That you're an orphan doesn't mean you shouldn't have sense. The words cut deeper than any slap. Angela lowered her head. She was used to his cruelty, but it never stopped hurting. The food sat untouched between them. From the adjoining compound, the neighbors heard the rising tension. They were no longer surprised because Patrick's anger had become a regular evening performance. Amongst them was Chica, the gym instructor who lived next door. He paused listening and his jaw was tightening. He had told Angela several times that she needed to stop allowing this treatment, but she always waved him off. Everyone knew Angela's story. The orphan who married a man who treated her worse than a stranger. That man is very wicked though, Madam Ifoma, one of the neighbors muttered. Every day we must hear noise. That poor girl has really suffered. Her friend Ngozi gave a bitter laugh. What do you expect? Some men marry women with her family because they know nobody will question them. If Angela had brothers, would he dare lift his hand? Angela on her part never came out to explain, and to the neighbors her silence was another wound. Chike, the gym instructor, was tall, broad-shouldered and the kind of man whose presence filled the space before his voice did. He trained young men in the mornings and evenings. His compound was always echoing with the sound of weights clanking and ropes hitting the ground. He had tried more than once to reach Angela. You can't continue like this, he told her one afternoon when she came back from the market. Your spirit is breaking. You need to fight for yourself. At least come and join us. Exercise and build your strength. Angela forced a smile that did not reach her eyes. Thank you, but I don't have anywhere to go. It's better I just stay here. Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of someone who had nowhere else to belong. Chike did not press further, but he watched. He noticed the bruises that appeared and disappeared. He noticed how her once bright steps had turned into a slow shuffle, and he also noticed how Patrick grew bolder with each passing day, and his voice sharper with his hands heavier. One night, as Angela walked past his corner with swollen eyes, he clenched his fist. Something told him that her story was about to change, whether she was ready for it or not. Angela had risen early that morning long before the first cock crew. Her back ached from yesterday's endless laundry job, but she could not rest. She opened the small cupboard where foodstuffs were supposed to be stored. The chef stared back at her bare, except for a tiny plastic bag containing beans and a half cup of rice. The sight made her chest heavy. She was tired of living this way, stretching coins like rubber and watching food disappear as quickly as they entered the house. Patrick had once again refused to give her money. When she asked him, he had waved her off, saying, "Angela, don't disturb me. You know I don't like women who nag. If you want to eat, you know where the market is." That was Patrick. He never gave a cobble more than he wanted. If she begged for 1,000 naira, he would drop 500 naira and expect her to prepare a feast fit for a king. He never cared that she was the one working herself to exhaustion, sometimes borrowing from neighbors and enduring shame just to keep food on the table. Angela sighed and picked up the small bag of beans. At least, this will cook into something warm, she told herself. Even if there is no meat and no oil, it is still food. By the time the sun had risen, the pot was already on the fire. The beans bubbled slowly, releasing a thin smell that carried no sweetness, only the plainness of survival. She stirred it gently, wishing she had even a small cube of Maggi to make it taste better, but she had nothing. When Patrick returned that evening, his footsteps were heavy and impatient. Angela already knew trouble was close. She set the table before him. Patrick dropped his bag on the sofa, loosening his belt, and leaned forward. The moment his eyes landed on the plate, his face hardened. "Angela, what is this?" "It's beans, sir," she replied. "That was all I could afford." Patrick's spoon hovered over the food. He stirred once, twice, and then froze. He lifted his head and glared at her. "Where is the meat?" Angela's heart sank. "Patrick, you didn't give me money. I used my own, so please just manage for tonight." The words had barely left her mouth before his hand struck the plate, sending beans flying across the room. The food splattered against the wall, dripping down in messy streaks. Patrick stood there, his chair screeching backward. "You mean that I, Patrick Okoro, will eat beans without meat, plantain or ordinary potatoes? Do you know who I am? Do you even know the kind of men I sit with? And you serve me this?" Angela's lips trembled. "I am sorry. I tried my best." "Your best?" he asked, and his voice rose like thunder. "Your best is an insult. Your best is poverty. Do you think I married you so I can be eating like a beggar? Is that what your dead parents taught you?" The words pierced her chest like knives. He knew she was an orphan, and he used that wound like a weapon every time. Tears welled in her eyes, but she forced them back because she didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. But Patrick wasn't done. He stepped closer, towering over her. "You are mocking me in my own house, Angela. You will not survive if you continue like this." Then his hand met her cheek with a crack that echoed in the room. Angela stumbled back, her hand flying to her face. Pain burned through her skin, but before she could recover, another slap landed, then a shove that sent her crashing into the wall. The neighbors heard the noise. Children paused their games. Mothers stopped stirring their pots, and voices murmured, "It has started again, no. That man will kill this girl one day, but she has no family, so who will fight for her?" Angela pressed her back against the wall, shielding herself as Patrick raged. He kicked the pot over, scattering what was left of the beans on the floor. He cursed her and called her names that cut deeper than his fist. Through the open window, Chica, the gym instructor, stood frozen. He had seen bruises before. He had heard whispers, but tonight was different. Tonight, he saw the violence in full. He saw Angela's fragile body shaking under the weight of a man twice her size, her lips bleeding and her eyes begging for mercy. Something inside him snapped. For months, he had told himself it wasn't his business, and he had also told himself that Angela needs to decide when she had had enough. But watching Patrick tower over her and watching her collapse under his blows, he knew he could no longer stand by. The corridor outside Angela's door was crowded with silence, that kind that gathers when people are afraid to move but cannot bear to turn away. Everyone waited for the fury in the room to either die down or explode, but Chike did not wait. He broke the door open with a plank. Patrick spun around with the arrogance of a man who had enjoyed too much power for too long. Angela stood by the wall, one hand on her cheek and the other clutching the edge of the table to steady herself. Chica's eyes went first to Angela's face, already swelling, and then to the floor where Beans lay like a crime scene. He shut the door behind him, not to hide what he was about to do, but to keep the watching children from carrying this picture to bed. Patrick, he said quietly, everything you have been doing ends tonight. Patrick gave a short, mocking laugh. And who are you in this house? Landlord? Pastor? Or even a policeman? Neighbor, Chica replied, and a man who will not stand by while another man destroys what he should protect. Patrick took a step closer. You have been looking for my trouble, right? You have always been advising my wife to exercise and always greet her like a savior. So this is your chance to show yourself, Abby. Listen carefully. This is my wife and my house, my rules. We don't need spectators here. Chike spoke without raising his voice. When you turn your wife into a punching bag, you invited the streets inside. When you made a meal out of her fear, you made it our business and I won't let it continue. Angela looked from one man to the other, panicking. Please, she whispered. Don't fight. She began to move towards the door, but Chike lifted a hand gently. You are safe, he said to her, with his eyes still on Patrick. Nobody is touching you again. Patrick snorted. Safe in my house? He reached for the broken plank he had used to hit the door earlier, lifted it as if to measure his weight. I will tell you what is safe and what minding your own business is. Chike took one step forward with his shoulders relaxed and his palms open. Years of training had taught him that loud men mistake noise for strength. He kept his voice calm. Put that thing down. Patrick gripped the plank tighter. Or what? Or you will see that the world is wider than your living room, Chike said, still controlled. Put it down and we will talk. Patrick swung the plank. It was clumsy, full of range and empty of discipline. Chike stepped aside and so he crashed into the table. He tried to rise, but Chike's hand was already there, pressing him down. Enough, Chike said. Outside, a chorus of head breaths were released. Footsteps shuffled as neighbors stepped back from the door. You think this is finished? I will show you both. Angela, go in there. Carry your load and go. Go to your champion, you ungrateful woman. Angela straightened. Her voice was steady in a way that surprised even her. Gratitude does not include dying quietly. Patrick backed a laugh that broke at the edges. You quiet? I feed you. You don't, she replied. In fact, you haven't done so for months. His mouth opened and closed. He shoved at Chike's hand. Chike let him rise, keeping himself between the man and the woman. Look, Chike said to Patrick, you have two choices. Number one, sit down and calm down, or you simply walk out and cool off. If you raise your hand again, I will have no other option than to call the police and I will give a statement. He pointed at Angela. Violence thrives in secrecy, but exposure starves it. If you had reported this man long time ago, all this nonsense would have stopped. Angela did not answer. She stood there, the way a tree stands after a storm. Patrick pushed past Chike, yanked the door open and stepped into the corridor only to meet a wall of neighbors pretending not to have been listening. Chike turned to Angela. Sit, he said politely. He pulled a chair from the corner and placed it beneath her. I would ask if you are okay because apparently you are not. I am really not okay, she replied, her eyes filled with tears again. I kept on telling myself to endure, that if I just stayed quiet, he would change, that if I left, I had nowhere to go. Endurance is holy when it protects life, Chike said, not when it excuses harm. He spoke with the practical clarity of a coach setting a plan. Tonight, you will lock your door. If he returns drunk, don't open. If he breaks in, we will call the police. Tomorrow morning, you and I will go to the station. After that, we will visit the clinic for proper checkups. And Angela, he paused, meeting her eyes. You will start training, not to fight him, but to rebuild yourself. Strength is not only for the ring, it is for standing in your own life. The words didn't heal her, but they strengthened her, and so she agreed to begin the journey the following day by 6 a.m. As Chica stepped into the corridor, neighbors murmured thank you. He walked into his flat and set his alarm for 5:30. Inside her room, Angela slid the boat across. She cleaned what she could and left the rest as it was. She lay down by her side. Sleep didn't come quickly, but for the first time in months, it was not fear that kept it away. It was the unfamiliar buzz of possibility. She didn't know what tomorrow would demand of her, but she only knew that someone had said everything had ended that night, and somehow she believed it. Before dawn, she was awake. She washed her face and wore her sneakers. Chica was already waiting in the yard. You are early, he said. Don't worry, everything will be fine. He handed her a skipping rope. She stared at it like it was a foreign object. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped it. Don't worry, Chica said gently. You are not here to impress anyone. You are here to find yourself again. Ready? Angela nodded, though she wasn't sure. The first attempt was clumsy. The rope slapped against her legs, tangling her feet, nearly sending her to the ground. She caught herself and gave a nervous laugh. Again, Chica said. She tried. She failed. She tried again, and then she failed again. By the 10th, she managed only 2 skips before the rope caught her shoes again. Maybe this isn't for me, she complained. Do you know what strength is? It is not about winning on the first try. It is about refusing to stay down even on the 10th. So try again, Chica encouraged. The neighbors who passed by slowed down to watch. A few whispered, but no one mocked. Something in the sight of Angela trying, despite everything, softened even the sharpest tongues. By the 15th attempt, the rope cleared the ground 3 times before stumbling. Chica clapped. That is it. Tomorrow it will be 5. Next week 10, and you will surprise yourself. Angela exhaled. For months, she had been shrinking, folding herself smaller to fit inside Patrick's shadow. This morning, for the first time, she felt a piece of herself expanding. They moved to stretches, then to squats. At each step, her body complained, but her spirit refused to stop. By the time Chica dismissed her, her legs shook like they might betray her, yet she walked back home straighter than she had in a long time. Patrick had spent the night drinking with friends and nursing his bruised ego. The humiliation of being checked in his own house to him felt like an infection. My wife is disrespectful, he told his drinking companion, slamming his glass on the table. That gym man is trying to steal my place. His friend shrugged. Handle your home like a man. Remind her who is the boss. Over the next week, Angela returned to the yard each morning. She improved little by little. Where her body had once failed, it began to obey. Where she had once been crushed began to rise. Chica introduced her to boxing drills. He held pads and guided her punches. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut, he repeated with his voice steady as a drumbeat. At first, her strikes were weak and uncoordinated, but with each attempt, she found rhythm. The impact of her fist against the pad sent a strange drill through her. Not joy in violence, but joy in knowing she wasn't helpless. You see, Chica said, smiling slightly. Your hands are not only for cooking, they can protect you too. Angela wiped sweat from her brows. I never thought I could do this. You could, Chike corrected. You only needed someone to remind you. Women smiled when she passed, some even offering small words of encouragement. And for the first time, Angela felt not as a victim, but as a woman rising. One evening, as she prepared to sleep, Patrick returned with his breath heavy with alcohol. So, he sneered, you have joined your new husband in his morning routines, skipping rope like a child and bossing like a madwoman. Is that how wives behave? Angela did not answer. She had learned that silence could be its own form of deviance. Patrick advanced with his finger jabbing the air. Angela, don't you ever think because one foolish neighbor stood up for you, you now have wings. You are still my wife and you will learn your place. For the first time, Angela did not retreat. She stood where she was with her hands at her sides, breathing steady, just the way Chica had taught her. Patrick's eyes narrowed. What? You think you can fight me now? Alright, let's try and see. He raised his hand, but Angela's body no longer flinched the way it used to. Something had shifted. She met his gaze, steady and unblinking. Her stillness unsettled him more than any scream would have. Patrick dropped his hand slowly, muttering under his breath. He stormed out, slamming the door. Angela exhaled, trembling only when she was alone. She had not hit him. She had not touched him, but she had stood her ground, and that night she slept with a strange peace. By the second week, her body was changing. She was stronger, her shoulders were firmer, and her steps were lighter. More importantly, her eyes carried a quiet fire. She still cooked, she still walked, and she still bore the weight of survival. Meanwhile, Patrick watched from a distance. He noticed the changes. His plan was not abandoned. He was only waiting for the day to strike. He did not speak about it, but he watched. He saw the way the neighbors greeted her with respect. He heard the quiet, well done Angela from same women who used to whisper pity. He felt his hold loosening and mistook it for humiliation. That thought alone poisoned him. By Friday, he was ready to make a scene. He left work early and went to a beer parlor where familiar faces were always ready to talk loudly and remember nothing correctly. They teased him about the incidents going on in his house. One man, light with drink, laughed too freely. Patrick, tighten your household, the man said. If you give this woman space, very soon she could treat you like houseboy. Something in Patrick snapped. He emptied his glass, pushed back his chair, and told himself lies from the pit of hell. That control equals respect and that fear equals love. He carried those lies home like a weapon. The compound was quiet when he arrived. Evening had rolled in cleanly and Angela had just finished bathing. Patrick opened the door and stood there with his breath hot with alcohol and his eyes bright in the wrong way. Where is my food? He asked without greeting. Angela did not move quickly. She had learned that rushing to please him did not reduce blows. It only fed them. She pointed to the covered plate on the table. Rice and stew, sir. He walked to the table, lifted the lid, stirred the stew, checked it, and then turned slowly like a man deciding which match to strike. Where is the meat? She kept her hands down. I did not buy meat today. You did not buy meat? He repeated. So you expect me to eat plain rice like a bachelor? You did not give me money, Patrick. I used what I had. I bought tomatoes and pepper. There is small fish in there. He scooped the stew with a spoon and searched. He found one thin piece of fish and dropped it back as if it had offended him. Angela, listen to me carefully. I am not your mate. I am not your father's gateman and I will not eat this nonsense. She stood still. Then, do not eat. Patrick was shocked and that shock turned to rage. Who is teaching you to talk back? He asked. That gym man? Is he filling your head with something? Was he the one that paid your bride price? Or is he mostly? Stop, she said, and do not say what you will regret. What will I regret? He took one long stride and grabbed her arm. You are warning me in my own house? She did not pull away. She looked at his hand on her skin, then at his face. Ogasa, leave my hands. He squeezed harder. You think because you jump rope in the morning you are now a soldier? He shook her once. You are my wife and I will show you. He raised his other hand. Old reflex and familiar arc. Angela's body remembered the drills. She shifted half a step to the side, raised her shoulder as a shield, turned her face slightly, protecting her cheekbone. His slap landed badly and lost force. He tried again, confused by the change. Patrick, she said with her voice steady, don't do this. Shut up. He pushed her towards the table. She grabbed the edge to steady herself. Patrick saw the pause and then he decided to go for noise. He reached for the pot lid and flung it aside. It hit the floor with a clang that fetched more ears. He lifted the pot itself as if to throw it away. Leave it, she said. That is food. He yanked. She heard it. The handle twisted. A corner of stew splashed onto the floor. Something shifted in Patrick's face. This was not the scene he wanted. He dropped the pot and went for her again. The first shove hit her shoulder. The second drew her backward into the chair. He came again with his mouth full of foam and insults. She lifted her arms in the simple guard position Chica had taught her. Palms in, elbows closed, and chin tucked. The blows lost direction. His frustration grew and his voice rose. Oh, so you have learned how to fight your husband. Good one. Bring it on and hit me. Angela did not answer, and that her silence threatened him in a way shouting never had. He grabbed a small stool, lifted it and drew back. Angela moved, not to attack but to stop a break that would have escalated everything. Enough, Chica's voice thundered. He threw him a glance and then laughed without humor. So you came again. You won the second round? Chica stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with a firm hand. He did not look at the neighbors. He did not look at the stool on the floor. He looked at Angela first. Are you hurt? She shook her head. Patrick felt weak and defeated, and in that frustration, he shouted, Angela, carry your things and go. Go and live with him, stubborn woman. Chica replied, she goes nowhere, and if you ever harm her, you will be met with the law. Patrick stood at the threshold with his eyes burning, and in that annoyance, just like a child, he spat to the side and stepped out, knocking his shoulder against the doorframe as if the house itself had offended him. By late evening, he returned with the stiffness of a man who had already chosen noise over sense. He did not greet anyone. He walked straight to the yard. He loosened his bets, rolled his shoulders, and stood in the open like a performance was about to begin. Angela, he shouted. Windows shifted. Curtains moved as apropos people in the compound were ready to hear and see his next line of action. So I ask you, dear Kamma tribe, what do you think will happen in the episode 2 of the story? Kindly give it a thumbs up, share out the stories to your loved one, and if you have not subscribed to this channel, punch on that subscribe button so you can join the Kamma tribe. Until I bring the next part of the story your way, it's a goodbye from here, and God bless you.